Chicken on a stick.
Hi, I'm Patrick.
I'm Maggie.
And we are Chicken on a Stick. Welcome back to another episode of Chicken on a Stick.
Welcome, welcome.
Today we're talking about a movie of my choice, which kind of was a last-minute thing. During our most recent stream, we went and saw the most recently released, as of time of recording, Wes Anderson film, Asteroid City. And during our talk, we brought up the Life Aquatic, and Maggie said, "Oh, I still want to see that."
Yeah.
So then I was like, "Perfect.
Yeah,
That's what we'll do."
easy enough.
So we're talking about the Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, or of Steve Zissou, and yeah, we'll be right back.
Summer's falling. It's going to rain in 5 minutes. We got to be quick.
But where are they?
Unknown. Split into two groups. I'll take Ned, Ogata, and Wolodarski.
Thanks. Thanks a lot for not picking me.
What? We're smack in the middle of a lightning strike rescue op, Klaus. What's the deal?
I'm sick of being on B Squad.
Listen, you may be on B Squad, but you're the B Squad leader. Don't you know me and Esteban always thought of you as our baby brother?
I've always thought of you two as my dads. Please don't let anyone make fun of me for saying so.
I can't guarantee that, Klausy, but I'll try. Can we get on with the maneuvers now?
Okay, and just to correct myself, the Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou.
With.
I always say back and forth between with and of, and it's with Steve Zissou.
Also, this entire time, I don't know why, maybe I always read the title of the movie. I never heard anyone really say it out loud, but I always thought that it was pronounced Steve Zissou. Like something very...
Like really French?
Yes, Steve Zissou. And just to hear it go, Zissou, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, that actually...
Because I was thinking like Jacques Cousteau.
Well, that's who his character is based on.
Right.
So it could make sense that you could read it that way.
Yeah.
And the point is, like, it kind of looks that way, but it's just Zissou.
Zissou.
Like, there's nothing fancy or French about it. But he is, for those who don't know, the movie is sort of a parody homage to French diving pioneer Jacques Cousteau, to whom the film is also dedicated. But a little information about the actual movie. It's a 2004 adventure comedy drama film written by Wes Anderson and Noah Baumbach, which I don't think... It's been a long time since I've watched this. It's been many, many years since I've watched this movie. So realizing now that it was co-wrote by Noah Baumbach, I understand why I actually like it so much more. Maybe why I like it a little bit more than the average person, because I've loved all of his... I like everything I've watched of Wes's, but I also have liked everything I've watched of Baumbach's too. Speaking of, Greta Gerwig has Barbie coming out in July, which she's married to Noah Baumbach, and he also co-wrote Barbie with her. So I'm also very much looking forward to that.
I'm very looking forward to that.
Anyway, that's very off topic. Life Aquatic was Anderson's fourth feature-length film. Was released on Christmas Day in 2004.
Was it really a Christmas movie? That's funny.
But it is directed by Wes Anderson, written by Wes Anderson, co-written by Noah Baumbach. Has a huge starring cast like all of Wes Anderson's movies do. Bill Murray, Owen Wilson, Cate Blanchett, Angelica Houston, Willem Dafoe, Jeff Goldblum, and more. But those are sort of all the kind of headliners that show up.
I love that his movies just do always have such a cool mixed bag of actors and actresses.
Yeah.
Really fun. And that he also does a good job in some of his movies, especially in the most recent one that we watched. You already got a big cast, but then he sometimes will sneak in an extra, person that you didn't know was going to be in the movie.
Yeah.
Like a little surprise treat.
So when the movie was released, it came out to mixed reviews and is considered a box office flop. It had a budget of $50 million, roughly, and from domestic and international showings, it only made about $34.8 million.
Really?
So it didn't even make its budget back.
Wow.
Since its release, it has gone on to be recognized sort of as kind of a cult classic, and kind of garnered a little bit of a following. I would say that I attribute that to how I first saw it, which was, I can't tell you the exact year, but if this movie came out in 2004, I'm going to guess it had to have been 2006, 2007, 2008-ish, where Comedy Central would play this movie all the time.
Really?
All the time. It was always on Comedy Central playing, and that's how I saw it. I feel like I saw like a snippet of it at one point, and I was like, what is this? And just like I just had the TV on in the background or something, and then it caught my attention, and then the next time it was on, I actually like watched the whole thing, and I was like, this movie's great.
That's funny. I didn't know about that.
The movie since then was remastered and re-released by the Criterion Collection in 2014. That is what we watched on, is the Criterion Blu-ray release of it. I have, I think, all of his movies that have been released on
Criterion.
Maybe.
Do you have
I don't have
Fantastic Mr.
Isle of
Fox?
Dogs. Yes, I don't have
okay.
Isle of Dogs, but I'm not. I assume Isle of Dogs has been, but I'm not sure. So
I have
doesn't
also
matter.
not seen that one.
Anyway, so that's sort of my history with this. Oh, actually, there is one other fun thing I wanted to point out, which I also did not know until this viewing, and I almost would not have caught it because I turned my head away when the credits were rolling, but I caught out of the peripheral of my eye a name, and I was like, did that just say what I think it said?
Yeah.
Henry Selick worked on this movie as an animator. I think that is all he is credited as. Let me pull it up, actually. I have many. So he's credited as like, did animation for this movie. Henry Selick, if you just don't know him by name, very well known for directing many stop-motion animation films, many successful ones. In fact, arguably one of the most successful ones ever made, A Nightmare Before Christmas. So he does a lot of that work, which makes so much sense watching this movie and knowing that there's a number of times that there's aquatic life that is definitely animated or like stop-motion-y looking.
Yeah.
And it makes way more sense that somebody who has like a career in that field was attached.
That's so cool. I love that.
So that was interesting to learn.
That's fun.
So anyway, into the movie itself.
Yeah.
We'll just kind of go through the movie like always and talk about it and go from there.
Yeah. And unlike you, I didn't really have a past with the movie. I knew of it when it came out, but for whatever reason didn't ever get around to watching it. I didn't watch Fantastic Mr. Fox until much later, like way after it had already come out and stuff, and I kind of didn't like it at first, but then I watched it again, and then I really liked it. I think the stop motion thing was weird for me at first, but then I ended up loving it. So I had always heard of this movie, really wanted to see it because I do love Bill Murray and the cast, so I'm glad that I finally got to see it.
Okay.
There we go.
So the movie opens, and we're at a film premiere in a very like swanky looking theater, like an old theater sort of thing that you'd think more of like you're gonna see a play in this,
right? With
that big seating, and they've got the whatever they call those things that are on the boxes on the walls, like the presidential suite or like wherever Abraham Lincoln got assassinated, whatever they call those things.
Yeah.
But it's an old-timey looking theater, and the movie that's being premiered is The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. And it's Chapter 1, and it's about running into the jaguar shark. And you can kind of tell this is sort of a big deal. Again, it's a documentary about this unheard of creature, and we get introduced to sort of the crew. It's being narrated by Steve himself, played by Bill Murray, and we're introduced to a bunch of different crew members. Klaus, some of the other members, they took on a bunch of interns who are unpaid. Angelica Houston is his, like, kind of estranged, not really estranged wife. And they're on the ship called the Belafonte. And it's as said in his monologue, basically, it's the most ambitious adventure of date. And it would end in tragedy.
Right.
So we're kind of just seeing this thing, and the one other thing to kind of point out, they randomly have a person on their crew who, some of the crew members don't have any experience in sailing life or like marine biology or whatever. They just came from something else and became part of the crew and are passionate about whatever they do.
Why not?
One of them is a stripper.
Yeah.
And not all the time is she topless, but the first like half of the movie, every time you see her, she's topless.
Yeah.
She does more than being topless, but that's just the way she's introduced. Is they're like, there's her. She was a stripper.
Was she in the Comedy Central cut?
Probably not. I would assume. Well, I mean, later on, I would assume any times where she was topless, probably not.
Yeah, that's funny.
Or maybe they edited like a black bar or something. I don't know what they did. It doesn't stick out to me. So when we watched it, I was like,
oh,
I don't remember that.
Yeah. Oh my.
We see basically Steve and his first mate, best friend, Esteban, get in diving gear. They jump into the water. They're swimming down there looking for things, filming stuff. And it's just those two. And we see some like really brightly like neon pink colored school of fish swim by. And they're capturing all of that. And then the next thing we see is Steve pops out of the water and he's like all over the place.
Yeah.
He's going on about something happened to Esteban.
Yeah.
There was a jaguar shark, and everyone's like, "What are you talking? What happened?" And he just keeps repeating that Esteban was eaten. And he's getting comments back of like, "Was he dead?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, he was eaten. He was chewed. He was eaten alive.
He was eaten."
They're like, "Was he swallowed whole?" No, he got chewed. Esteban's dead. And then Klaus says that Steve has crazy eyes, and we get a zoom in on his eyes, just probably like panic or something. You just saw like your best friend being eaten by a shark. Also weirdly topical.
That is a little topical. A little on the nose there.
If you watch this anytime around when it was released and you don't know about what happened in Egypt, well, Esteban happened in Egypt.
Esteban, yeah. Very unfortunate.
After the movie ends, the auditorium or the theater's relatively quiet, and there's a little Q&A with Bill Murray sitting up there and then like a moderator guy asking the questions, and no one's really like jumping up to ask questions. They get a couple questions in there. One question about like, why didn't you show the shark?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I dropped the camera when my best friend was getting eaten by this thing.
Right.
So I didn't capture it, but that's what the second part's going to be about. So his plan was they would release this, make some money off of it, to fund another expedition to go out and find the jaguar shark and kill it for revenge for Esteban.
Right. We're going to avenge his death.
And we find all that out because up in the balcony seating is Owen Wilson, who asks the question of what's next, and he kind of explains, well, we're gonna go and kill the shark. They do ask, this is a great part, I love the delivery of this. Somebody asks, what is the scientific purpose of killing this thing? Because it's probably an endangered species if we've never seen it before. And there's just a pause, and he just says, revenge.
Yeah. I wrote down, like, my favorite quote that when he said it, and he said it just so kind of deadpan and matter of factly, was, "I'm gonna kill the shark that ate my friend."
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. So as he's leaving the exhibition hall, or whatever you'd want to, the theater or whatever, he's kind of talking with like a, I don't know that he's necessarily like a manager, but the guy who kind of finds all the funding and stuff for them. And he's also sort of asking, like, was the movie good? Whatever. He's, pretty self-conscious about it. But during this, we do see, over in a corner, there's another captain, and it's Jeff Goldblum.
There he is.
Captain Hennessy.
There he is.
I love Jeff Goldblum. I think he's definitely like a perfect Wes Anderson type.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's already just quirky on his own,
Yeah.
so it works very well.
He was born to be in Wes Anderson movies. They just have that same je ne sais quoi. I don't know.
Je ne sais quoi.
Je ne sais quoi. Like, something about them, they're so weird and quirky, and they fit together so well.
Yeah. We do also find out that Steve's wife is Hennessy's ex-wife.
Right.
So there's like a little weird love triangle thing sort of going on here. There's a number of comments in the movie that Steve says about thinking that Hennessy was gay.
Right.
Including a use of the F word, I guess is how you would say that. So if that's a little off-putting to you, it is in the movie. It was 2004. People were throwing that stuff around like no big deal.
We don't say that word anymore.
But there's many there's, I don't know, at least 2, maybe 3 comments where he's like, I always thought he was gay, or I thought he was part gay or something, like throughout the whole movie. So it does come off for a payoff towards the end, but we'll get there.
Right.
We also get Klaus walks up to Steve at one point and introduces him to his nephew, who's like a big fan. And the nephew, for whatever reason at a movie premiere, brought a fish in a bag.
Yeah.
Like that you'd get at like a pet store or something. They're going to put it in a bag so you can take it home. He hands it to Steve, and it's a crayon fish, I think is what he called it. But it's basically a seahorse that's like rainbow colored.
It's very, very pretty.
And it looks very cool. It is, obviously, this is where I'm like, it kind of looks stop motion-y because its movements are not quite natural looking, but it's definitely an animated fish of some sort, and it does look, I like it.
Yeah.
If it is stop motion-y puppet stuff, like
it looks really cool.
That's right up my alley. I love that stuff, so it looks great. Another man at this premiere asks Steve to sign some posters. He goes over and signs a poster. It's a poster of one of his previous documentaries. And then he asks him to sign another one, and another one, and another one. And Steve's like, how many of these do you have? And he shows him, and he goes, you can just forge the rest of them.
Yeah, I'm not going to sign all of these.
And the guy just goes, I could have done that from home.
Yeah.
And he's like, what?
Why are you here?
Point?
No, I want your signature.
Yeah. Which was great.
It was hilarious because he did entertain him for a good amount of time signing those posters. Like, okay. All right, that's enough.
He also gets asked by some random guy in a crowd, maybe a reporter or something. They're behind a barricade, so it's hard to tell if they're supposed to be a reporter or if it's just some like random fan who was in a sectioned off area or something. I don't know what you'd call it. But he asks Steve who he's going to kill in the second part, and Steve just attacks him.
Yeah. He lost his cool there.
He gets pulled off, and then we leave this premiere, and we're sort of back to just sort of the team. And Steve, again, is struggling he's trying to work with like his manager, publicist, whatever the guy is, to get funding. And we find out at this point that Steve's team has not made a successful or a hit documentary in over 9 years. So that's why money's not just coming in like it used to, and they're kind of scraping by. Or
why they're not paying their interns.
That's why they can't pay interns. Exactly. The guy says he is talking to somebody for potential funds, but it's going to take about 2 weeks. Steve demands that it be done by Sunday, and the guy's like, well, that's not possible. He goes, I don't care. In 10 days, I'm going to find that shark that killed my best friend.
Yeah.
He just gives him like a hard, 10 days, money or not, I'm going to find the shark.
Yeah.
Owen Wilson shows back up. He plays a character named Ned. And it's revealed that he's the son of a woman that Steve knew at some point in his life. Maybe about 30 years beforehand. However, I think that Ned says at one point that there's a comment about him being 30.
Yeah.
Whether that's a generalization or he was actually 30, not super clear, but around there. So somebody Steve knew about 30 years ago, and instantly, I think you're supposed to pick up on, oh, is this supposed to be like his long-lost child?
Yeah.
They don't let you linger on it for very long. Steve just straight out spells like, am I your father?
Am I your dad?
Maybe? And neither of them actually knows for certain. We do find out that his mother killed herself recently.
Right. Doesn't Owen
that's why
Wilson's
he's there.
Owen Wilson's character basically say, like, I don't know, but it's maybe. Could be.
Yeah, he does say at one point in the movie that he felt like he kind of owed it to himself to at least give it a try and find out.
Yeah.
We do get some fun stuff where it's like he's all dressed up in like this uniform. It's a pilot's uniform, and we learn that he flies for Air Kentucky out of Louisville, and it's just the most generic thing because he says Air Kentucky, and Steve's like, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah.
It's like he's like, oh yeah, because you're landlocked. You're just in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
You fly tiny planes, and he's not even a pilot. He's a co-pilot, which is even funnier. I don't know how much that matters. I don't know much about aviation, and if there's really a difference between the two. I always just thought both were pilots, but one of them is like two of them are in a plane. You are the pilot, meaning like you're controlling everything, and the other guy's just your backup to make sure.
Yeah, your second-hand man.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Steve then goes off to be alone. He has a smoke. He goes up on this. I don't know what you're a boat person. What would that be? He like goes up to like the King of the World part from Titanic.
The forward.
The what?
Forward.
The forward. Yes.
The King of the World part of a boat.
I don't know anything about boats. You're the boat expert here.
It's a ship, not a boat. Get it right.
Whatever. He goes up there. He takes a smoke. And during that time, we do get some songs played. There's a couple songs in here that everybody will know. A number of David Bowie songs. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are sung in like French. I think it's French. I'm not 100% sure what language it is.
I'm pretty sure.
But they're recognizable. I think this first one might be Life on Mars by David Bowie. Or no, sorry. No, it's not. It's Starman.
Oh, yeah.
By... I have no idea how you even say this guy's name. So I'm not even going to try.
You're not even going to try?
Nope. It definitely is like Sue Jorge. S-E-U? Sue Jorge? I do not know.
No idea.
At least I think that might be the first one. I don't know. There's a number of them that are used, but I like that song. It's also, the reason I remembered it is because more recently in film watching, it was also in Licorice Pizza.
Right.
Which came out last year? 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
Man, time flies.
When you're having fun.
Yeah. We do find out also that Ned has been a member of the Zissou Society, which was like this monthly membership thing. I feel like
Is it like a fan club kind of thing?
Yeah, I feel like these right. It's a fan club thing. I feel like these used to be a pretty big thing.
Yeah.
But probably haven't been for like 20 plus years. I can't think of a single one. I feel like there might have been some in the 90s or maybe early 2000s that I can possibly remember. I was never signed up for anything, but I just...
I remember there was...
It was like, what was the those old animal magazines that you get infomercials about?
Oh, yeah, like
Zoo something.
Yeah, like
sign up for Zoo whatever and get the first get the elephant magazine for free.
Sponsor a panda bear and receive a monthly magazine and a stuffed panda bear. Yeah. When I was in junior high, there was a girl that was in my band class. I forget what she played. I think she played the French horn. But for her birthday, her parents got her into the Lord of the Rings official fan club, and it was a very big deal to her. And she was like, I'm gonna learn how to speak Elvish, and this is the best gift. I just wanted to be a part of the official fan club. It's official.
People do that.
It was really.
People do learn Elvish.
They turned it into a college course. Do you remember that?
Sure.
They did.
I don't know why you're asking me. I didn't go to college. I don't know what courses they had.
Someone somewhere made like a token class.
I believe it.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure they had like Harry Potter fan clubs and things like that, but like back then it was like it wasn't like the digital age, so they were like mailing things in and getting things in the mail and all of that. Yeah, so
Ned had been a member of this since he was 11 years old.
Yeah.
He even had a little like ring, which you could tell was like an old-timey thing, because Steve's like, oh wow, look at that. Yeah. Steve offers him to smoke. I believe it's supposed to be weed. I think he says something about weed, but Ned turns it down because he prefers to smoke a pipe instead.
Yeah.
So he just randomly smokes a pipe. That's a quirk that he has.
Yes, it is. Very old school.
Then we learn a little bit about the Belafonte, the boat. He bought the boat for $90,000 from the U.S. Navy.
Yep.
And then we get this. I really like this shot. The way that it's done is the boat is like bisected, like it's cut straight down the middle in half. Like we're seeing a cross section to this boat, and we're seeing all these different rooms, and he's pointing them out. Like this is where people sleep. This is where we do our science shit. This is our recording booth where we got to redub audio and whatnot.
This is the galley.
This is the food place. This is the whatever. This is a part I added on where you can just, it's got a bunch of portholes on it where you can just look out into the ocean. Yeah. We also have 2 dolphins with cameras on them that follow us around. They don't do shit.
That was hilarious.
Just randomly has dolphins.
At this point, have we seen when they fed an orca?
No.
Okay.
We also see that he does have a sub on his ship, a yellow submarine, obviously, very clearly a Beatles reference. I don't think you can put a yellow submarine and it not just be a Beatles reference, obviously. Yeah. But on the sub is the name Jacqueline crossed out, and then under that it says Deep Search. Yeah. And he asks, what is Jacqueline? And it was his first ex-wife.
Right.
So he named a sub after her, got divorced, crossed it out, renamed it. We do learn later on he's got a tattoo on his arm that says Jacqueline, but it's also crossed out, and then under that also says Deep Search.
Yeah. It's the only way to do it.
Which is funny that he did that to both the submarine and his... He could have just done what, like, Johnny Depp did when he had, like, Winona tattooed on him and changed it to Wino Forever, or whatever the hell he changed it to.
He made it work.
Yeah. he made it work. That's one way to look at it, I guess.
One way to look at it. Also, again, on the nose earlier with the shark attack. Also, a little on the nose, submarine content.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
We're living in a fun Life Aquatic time.
We're living in a time that is keep your ass away from the ocean.
The ocean's fighting back.
It sure is.
So they go out to a dinner. Steve and Ned and just, trying to get some funding and everything. And Steve overhears some people speaking in, I think, French. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm not 100% sure. It's a foreign language. I think it might be French. And he knows what they're saying, and they go into the room, and they're talking shit about him.
Yeah.
Being like, he hasn't made anything good in so long, and blah, blah, blah. And he just stands in the doorway, mm-hmm. stares at them, and they just stop talking. And he just walks away.
Like, the way that he stares at them, like, I'm just gonna stand here and wait until they notice me.
Yeah.
Noticing them. It was like, it had a little air of intimidation to it.
Right. He does get outside and he's smoking with Ned again, and he does say, like, Ned's trying to be like, oh, don't worry about it, and Steve's basically like, they say when people talk about you, it's like jealousy. When they talk about you like that, it's jealousy or something. But it still hurts.
Yeah. Still not nice.
Steve then decides to take Ned to his own island that he owns. So they fly off to this island. If you haven't picked up at this point, also, Steve wears a red beanie.
Yes.
In a style of where you got the nipple.
Yeah.
Sticking up. It's the only way I know how to call it, is the nipple.
Yeah.
Which is not a style I would ever wear a beanie like.
No.
Because I think it looks dumb, but I think it works perfectly for this. The whole team, outside of interns, wear the same thing. It's like the uniform's like a baby blue, mm-hmm. sky blue jumpsuit, sort of get up, and a red beanie.
And the red beanie with the little tip on top.
With the little nipple on top.
Yeah. Yeah, not
always. Not all of them have the nipple, but very specifically Steve does.
Yeah, he does.
Because he's a boob. When he lands, Angelica Houston's there, his wife, and she greets him with, the cat's dead.
Yeah.
And he says, wait, which cat? And then she tells him, and he's like, well, how? What happened to him?
Yeah.
And she says, a rattlesnake bit it in the throat. And he's just like, what? Can't you work on, like, your delivery or say something nice and not just be so blunt with me about this?
Bedside manner, Jesus.
And the best part is then Ned asks, he's basically like, sorry, and when he asks what type of cat it was, he goes, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Maybe it was a tabby? I don't know.
I don't know what it was.
Like, they have a bunch of cats. He doesn't fucking know. He knows it by name.
Yeah.
But with Steve, we get a lot of this sort of almost like two-way dialogue where he says something really, like, quick and in the moment, but then says something sort of the opposite almost right away. Like, in this case, he's asked a question, and he snaps of, like, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
And then he's like, maybe it was a tabby.
Yeah.
Maybe. So he still, like, answers the question, but
he balances himself out.
Right. This is where we get the random scene. He just walks off, he gets up on this ladder, dangles like a little fish in the air, and an orca jumps out of the water and eats it out of his hand.
I literally wrote down, where is it? I wrote, he just hand feeds orcas, ... Okay.
Yeah, there's no real rhyme or reason or explanation other than he's like a marine life documentary guy, so he just owns an orca, apparently.
That's a third on
recent
the nose
event things.
Orcas be attacking yachts.
They do be doing that, I guess.
They're trying to take down the rich.
Good. Eat the rich.
Eat the rich.
I feel like we might have said that last time, too.
Might have.
During the night, Ned gets woke up in the middle of the night. It's dark out. He gets woke up. He's told through a radio to, like, come out here. We need you. Steve's called him out there, plus a bunch of his other crew, to film this very rare event that happens where what he says is jellyfish all get washed up on the shore.
Right.
And they're filming it, and all the jellyfish are like glowing and stuff, and it looks really cool and neat. And he's just doing his normal thing, and then Ned interrupts and asks him a question where he just kind of, why do they glow? And Steve answers it, and then is like, come here. And they kind of get a little close, and they're talking. He's like, good ad-lib. Like, that was great.
Yeah.
Do you want to be a part of my team? And Ned's like, I don't know. He does say at one point, he says, Steve, I'm not even that strong of a swimmer. The answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
And during that, we find out the cameraman turned the camera off because he thought they were having a moment. And Steve's like, I never said to cut. You just film everything.
Yeah.
That was good. That was good stuff. And then a journalist shows up and tells them that those aren't even jellyfish. There's something else. And Steve touches it and goes, damn, she's right.
Yeah. Sure enough.
The person who showed up, her name is Jean. This is Cate Blanchett's character.
Right.
2004, looks very young, almost hardly recognizable. At that time, she would have been doing, I don't remember.
Benjamin Button?
No, Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
2004?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
She might have just finished doing
Yeah.
the final Lord of the Rings, because I think that's like 2001. And then
Yeah, you're right.
I think 2004 was when Return of the King won everything.
Galadriel.
So she's from a newspaper. We did hear earlier on that there was a newspaper that wanted to do like a cover story about Steve, and this is who they sent. She just happens to also be pregnant when she gets there, because of course.
Of course.
And when Steve's like showing her to her room, he tells Klaus, not this one. He's basically calling dibs. He's like, dibs on the pregnant lady.
Yeah. Leave her alone.
Even though he's married.
Yeah.
Or maybe married.
Whatever degree of married he is.
We do see at this point Ned also quits his job. He calls back to Air Kentucky, says that he got people to fill in for him, and he basically tells his boss that he has to see where this goes.
Yeah.
And thanks for understanding.
Yeah.
And that he'll call him back in like a month to update him on how life is going.
Yeah.
He then sees he then hears, as he's like going back to his room, everybody else is kind of asleep. His room has light on, Jean's room has light on, but he hears her reading, and he goes into her room. She's just reading out loud.
Yeah. Well, she is saying that she heard or she read somewhere that your baby can now, understand words and things, and she wants to acclimate it to her voice, so she's trying to find anything to read out loud so that the baby gets used to her voice.
Yeah, so she's just reading a 6-volume set of books out loud, like a crazy person to herself.
It's such a cute scene.
Okay, so it's the next morning, and we see Steve has this box full of shoes. They had a bunch of these made, didn't sell them all, so he's got a ton of them. And they're just like running shoes with his name on them.
Yeah.
So they're kind of their colors of like the light blue, and it says Zissou on it, which is, I guess, at peak popularity. Like any good athlete, you have your own shoe line, I suppose.
Right.
He does an interview with Jean. She asks him if it's his last voyage. He says no comment, and then says no.
Yeah.
Again, sort of is like two-way kind of going about it. They kind of get off to a rough start because she's asking him some questions that he thinks are like sort of trap or trick sort of questions, like gotcha questions, when he thought that this was supposed to just be sort of like a puff piece.
Right.
He's also, again, worried about how people viewed part 1. While he's talking to Jean, they're sitting in like an office sort of situation where she's got a recorder on a table, but behind him are these like big glass panels with water filled behind it, like something you'd see at like an aquarium, basically. And in it, the orca.
Orca.
Throughout this whole scene, when we cut back to Zissou and we're looking at him. The orca is just swimming in the background, swimming upside down, spinning.
Being so cute.
Looking like he's basically bonking his nose against the glass.
Yeah, I mean, boo on, animals in captivity. But he was really, really, really cute. And he was just being all playful.
Yeah.
So cute.
Steve gets a little angry with Jean here. He calls her a fake. Then points a gun at her and asks if this is fake. She basically asks the question if the jaguar shark's even real, and if any of that stuff was sort of faked or phony, and that's where he's like, you're fake and you're a phony. And then he pulls out a gun and he's like, does this look fake to you?
Yeah, you can tell that he doesn't like his work put into question in that way. He doesn't like being talked to.
Well, I think mostly it's because he's grieving the whole time. This whole movie, he's grieving the loss of his best friend Esteban, who he's been doing this forever with, and he's not really processing it. Yeah. So when the question of the legitimacy of what he claims to have happened but wasn't filmed, he gets a little on edge about it.
Strikes a chord.
We then see from here, Klaus goes and confronts Ned. Klaus basically is trying to tell Ned, like, I don't care if you might be his son.
Yeah.
I'm his best friend now. Don't do anything to hurt him or whatever. And he slaps Ned.
Hilarious slap.
My favorite bit from this is Ned just gets back up in this, like, southern accent that Owen Wilson is doing. He says, if you touch me again, I'm going to kick your goddamn teeth out.
Yeah. It's so funny seeing Klaus just be very protective of Steve. And, it's kind of one of those things, like when the best friend approaches her friend's new boyfriend and is like, if you hurt her, I'll hurt you, kind of thing. And
have you done that before?
No. I don't think I ever cared that much.
Oh, wow. Tell that to all your friends.
No. My friends made good choices.
Oh.
That's a lie. Anyway, but no, it was really, really cute to see him be, like, really protective of him. And the slap is just so funny. And I love seeing he's so taken aback by it at first. Yeah. And it's just a funny scene.
I do just like the delivery of the I'll kick your goddamn teeth out, because Ned's been, like, really mild-mannered, like a nice southern boy sort of thing. And then all of a sudden he just turns it on and he's like, I'll kick your goddamn teeth out.
Don't you ever do that again.
They go inside. Steve says to watch it around the reporter. Again, he's still kind of coming off from a heated discussion with her that he's upset about. Steve and Ned have a little bit more of a conversation. Steve does say he learned of Ned 5 years ago in a newspaper. He assumed... Basically, he was asking... Ned was asking, did you know about me before I showed up? And he's like, yeah. There was a news article about me that was wrote, and you were mentioned in it. And he just says, I assumed that they got their information correct.
Yeah.
Like, I assume the newspapers write the correct stuff, that they checked their facts. And he just says, I didn't ever reach out because I hate fathers and I never wanted to be one.
Right.
But now with you...
Yeah. Kind of like a backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay.
He also, at this point, he gives Ned a gun. Ned's like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
And then he turns again to the stripper lady and goes, hey, do all the interns get guns? And she replies, no, they all just share one.
Yeah.
But he still gives the gun to Ned. He's just like, just take it.
We share one.
We find out that the funding was turned down. Again, this is the thing that he was like rushing, like, I'm going to leave with or without it. And Ned overhears this, and Ned steps in and says that he inherited a load of money and asks if that will help. They get into this rickety helicopter that they have. They fly the helicopter to the producer, whatever this guy is again, and the guy's like, okay, with Ned's money, we got the rest of the money on loan, but there are rules. One, everybody will be drug tested.
Yeah.
He's like, piss tests?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 2 is they have to have a guy from the bank who will keep them on budget. Steve just refers to him as a snitch.
Yep.
And 3, they can't kill the shark.
Yeah.
Which was the whole point of the expedition.
Yeah, that was literally the note that I wrote down was, wait, we can't kill the shark? Then what the hell's the point?
Yeah. So they agree to the terms, and we get a montage of them getting prepared to leave on the expedition. We get to see all of the team working out, doing things like running shirtless on the beach, putting things together, everybody dressed up in their uniforms, all that sort of stuff. And including 2 of the characters throwing dynamite into the water and blowing it up.
Yeah.
Not for any reason, just making sure that it's working.
Just for shits and giggles.
We also see Ned flirting with Jean, the reporter. When they're running on the beach shirtless, everybody's running in one direction. Steve's riding a bicycle, obviously.
Right.
Ned breaks off and runs over to Jean when he sees her. Steve comes over with the bicycle and gets him back to running.
Yeah.
We then see Klaus I think it's Klaus, but Ned and somebody putting on scuba gear, so like goggles. They have the oxygen tank and stuff, and they're like falling back into a pool, like teaching him how to do that or training, whatever. It immediately cuts to Ned laying on the ground, everybody huddled around him, and Steve giving him like CPR, or I guess not technically CPR. The chest compressions or breathing in oxygen, whatever, to get them to spit up the water.
Yeah.
This just is kind of a callback to Ned being like, I'm not really a strong swimmer.
Yeah.
He literally, with an oxygen tank and scuba gear,
Almost dead.
Almost drowned by going into the water.
It was hilarious. And it is so funny to me, the goggles that they wear. They're like the old-timey ones where it's just one whole thing.
Yeah.
Instead of like each for your eyes. It looks so crazy and silly to me.
We also see in their downtime on the boat that the crew watches old Steve Zissou documentaries. They're just watching these old ones. In this one, they're in like the Arctic or something, and they're doing like they cut like a hole in the ice to go in, and Steve's like, "Do you hear that?" And you don't really hear anything. He does this multiple times where you're like, do you hear that? And you don't hear something. But they save these wild snow mongooses. That's just, I don't know if those, I would assume that they're not real. I don't know how many of the sort of animals, exotic things that they show on this are actually real or not.
I think they're real.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't plan on going to find out.
No?
No.
You want to go to Antarctica?
No, I would.
Oh.
You know I'd go anywhere. I would climb Everest, and I know the chances of dying are pretty high.
Yeah, they are.
I'd still do it.
That's a terrible idea.
The way I see it is, one, I either reach the summit of Everest, which is like a cool thing to be like, I did that, or 2, I freeze to death along the way, and then I'm just left there forever, so everybody's gonna see me.
Have you seen that TikTok of that lady on Mount Everest? And then there's like some sort of wind that go like
oh yeah, body
and
like goes
bodies just like falling down. That was awful.
Yeah, that happens.
You want to do that?
Yes. I want to see green boots. Anybody who knows about Everest knows about that.
Green boots.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So Eleanor, Steve's wife, leaves, saying she doesn't want to be a part of whatever's going on out there because she has a bad feeling.
Yeah.
Says that Steve shouldn't have taken Ned's money to do this, and she leaves. Steve and Ned have a little bit of a conversation, and Steve asks him if he would ever think about changing his name. He's basically saying, like, would you change, like, your last name to Zissou? Yeah. Would you take, like, my last name? And Ned's like, I don't know. I'll have to think about it. He's like, I wouldn't have named you Ned. I would have named you Kingsley.
Yeah. Okay.
So we do see he gets, like, his own cards, not not business cards. There's a certain words for them. Notary? No.
For when you notarize things?
No, it's a type of paper. His own,
Letterhead. Letterhead.
Yeah, he gets his own letterheaded paper that says Ned, parenthesis, or is it Kingsley parentheses Ned, Zissou on it later on, which is just again Steve trying to like accept him as his son, but also change him in a way that he would want him to be, basically.
It's very passive aggressive.
So after they do that, they kind of have a discussion about what they need to do, like what their next step and everything is, and they say, we've got to go to this underwater sea lab. It's just that we see an image of it, and it's this laboratory that's underwater, and there's just a giant tower that comes out of the water, and you go into it, and you gotta walk all the way down. So they sail to that, or they're setting sail to that. Steve's getting interviewed again by Jean, up on the deck this time. He randomly asks her if she wants to go up in his balloon, which seems like a very random question to ask. And they just have this, like, sort of hot air balloon bench thing. Because they're not in, like, a hot air balloon proper, but they're in it is like a hot air balloon. But they're also just sitting on it like it's a bench or something. And they're just sitting there talking. He apologizes for making her cry in the last interview when he got snappy with her. And we get a little bit of her backstory about her being pregnant in her life, in that the person who got her pregnant is married, and she's not the wife, so it was an affair, and it's somebody like she works with, I believe. So it's a little bit of a mess, to say the least. Steve, unprovoked for no reason, leans in to give her a kiss, and she like turns away.
It's so awkward.
Very awkward, because he's definitely much older than she is. She asks him why he abandoned Ned, and he just says, I've never met the guy before. Like, I never met him before this. I couldn't have abandoned him. He also has a drink that he had an intern give him, and just during the course of their conversation, she takes the drink out of his hand, drinks it, and his response is just, you really think it's cool to hit the sauce while you have a bun in the oven?
Yeah. She's like, meh.
Yeah.
It looked like some kind of little martini of some sort.
Right. We then get to see a little bit of the dolphins.
Again, very cute.
Steve says to get the dolphins to swim under the ship and check out that everything's good, and they're like pressing this button to send a command to the dolphins, and they're watching these monitors, and the dolphins are just looking at each other. They're just like nodding their heads. They don't care.
So funny.
So the dolphins don't do anything, basically.
They're like, okay.
We do find out at this point that Ned wrote Steve a letter 17 years ago, and Steve's like, oh yeah, I wrote every letter I responded to. I wrote back, and Ned's like, oh, I know. And we find out what the letter he wrote back was. He's just answering a question, some nice like pleasantries and stuff like that. He does say in the letter, I remember meeting your mother. And then at the end, the best part is, because he told him that he wrote everybody back, the best part is, at the end of the letter it says, dictated but not read.
Dictated but not read.
So like somebody just said, hey, this kid wrote this to you, probably read it to him or whatever, and then he just dictated while they typed it back up and sent it to him.
Right.
Which was great. They get to the sea lab, and we find out that it's the door's locked, that there's security to it, and Ned's like, should we even be here? And he's like, yeah, this is for all of the science community. Now just, like, let's just break in. And they break in and an alarm's going off.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, they added an alarm! Somebody get me something so we can turn it off.
Yeah.
We find out that the reason for all of this is because it's not just that anybody can use this lab. It's Captain Hennessy, or Jeff Goldblum's
Right.
character, his laboratory.
His very specific laboratory.
His specific laboratory. They go downstairs. They use the radar there to find the jaguar shark. Because Steve, whenever Esteban got eaten, shot it with a tracker dart.
Right.
They just needed something to be able to track it. So they get in there, they use the radar, they find where it's located at, so they decide to go and start going that way. But before they leave, Steve just says, grab everything you can and put it onto the ship.
Yeah.
Basically, if it's not nailed down, take it.
Take everything you can.
And the bank guy who's with them is like, isn't this stealing? He's like, no, I'm going to give it back.
Yeah.
He also takes like an espresso machine from there as well. And he basically says, we've got about 20 minutes before we're all arrested, so get what you can and get back onto the ship.
Get the hell out.
They get a bunch of stuff onto the ship. We cut to another scene. It's basically Ned and Jean hanging out in a hot tub. She's not in the hot tub. She's just like there with him, and he's in the hot tub. I guess he just is really bad with water, because even though he's in a hot tub that's probably like 2 feet deep, maybe, he's putting goggles on for
like a
whatever
little kid.
reason. And then he gives her a necklace that he made. It has peppermint or mint dental floss as the string.
Yeah.
That way it, smells nice, I suppose.
It's very, very endearing and, something like a little kid would be doing, approaching someone that they like.
It is clear at this point that the two kind of have a thing together, or they're kind of interested in each other. Jean goes back to her room, and her door's open, and inside is Steve reading her notebook. He's kind of like, I can't believe you're saying this shit about me. And she's like, how'd you get in here? My door was locked. And he's like, yeah, I kicked it in. And then he just says, based on what he read, he's like, please don't make fun of me. I just wanted to flirt with you.
My favorite line out of the whole movie, it was the cutest thing ever. That was my favorite scene when she says something. The way that he says it is so, like, sweet and, like, just very soft. Please don't make fun of me. I just wanted to flirt with you.
Yeah.
It's so cute. I love that scene.
I don't think that would work on me after somebody broke into my bedroom. No. I don't think so.
I just wanted to flirt with you.
Yeah. We cut to Operation Hennessy, I think is what the name of the ship is called, which is Jeff Goldblum's ship. He finds out that somebody broke into their sea lab, and he determines that they're going to hunt down the people who did so.
Right.
The team... We cut back to Team Zissou, and the team does a dive because they heard a phantom signal, so they do a dive. So a bunch of them get in their wetsuits, get in their scuba gear. Ned's there, Steve's there, Klaus is there, the guy who filmed things are there, and they're going through like this seaweed forest thing. I don't know what you'd call that exactly. A lot of bright colors. We see a lot of fish and things kind of swimming around and stuff going by.
So pretty to look at. Such eye candy.
And the phantom signal is a crashed airplane just at the bottom of the sea. And I love that we're watching a movie about like a documentary crew, because you get to see them be like, they see what it is and they're like, okay, get the camera, go over there, come back this way, we're going to come this way. Ned, maybe you say, Ned's like, can I call you Dad? And he's like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Let's maybe a different nickname. And somebody says, how about Steve Z? And he's like, oh yeah, Steve Z's good.
Steve Z.
How's that? He's like, I don't know. So they just film themselves going down to the plane.
Right. Just completely reworking an otherwise organic, natural experience.
Right.
To get a better result. Which I feel like happens still to this day.
And that's what's great, is it's like, it kind of adds to his insecurity with how his movies are being redeemed or received, and how he's been asked questions about sort of like the legitimacy of it. Is like is the jaguar shark even real? You didn't film any of it. What actually happened to Esteban? Is any of this stuff real? Are you faking things? And now we're seeing that, well, yeah, they made like a real discovery of this phantom signal thing.
Right.
But it's so overly produced at this point that doesn't necessarily feel natural. And especially after they go into the plane, we cut straight to him doing a dubbed voiceover of what they were just doing.
Right. Which is, if you watch any of those like lifestyle vloggers or lifestyle TikToks where it's like, here's what my typical morning looks like, and they very clearly had to go and set up their camera, then get back in bed, make the lighting right, go back and look at it, come back, like just completely overly romanticizing what's supposed to be natural.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. After this, because of the sort of conversation that took place while they were underwater with Klaus and everything about, like, can I call you Dad, and Steve Z, whatever, Ned just walks up to Klaus and slaps him. And Klaus is like, what the fuck? And he's like, I owed you one. He's like, no, what? He's like, no, you didn't. You told me that if we were ever to do anything again, you're going to hit me. He goes, no, but I owed you one for when you slapped me. He's like, but so now I owe you one. He goes, no, now we're even.
Yeah. And
Klaus just kind of storms off like, what?
It was a hilarious little slap fight.
We then see Steve is up on deck. He's using like sort of binoculars or something. He sees a ship out in the distance, and he asks the guy, like, who's supposed to be on watch? And Ned was supposed to be on watch. And Steve goes, and we see that Ned's in the room with the reporter. And he tells... This is a funny line to me. Ned tells Jean, I think you'll make a great single mother.
Yeah. I loved it.
Why not just, like, you'll make a great mother? Yeah. Why, like, you'll make a great single mother?
And it's so funny because you could tell he meant it. He had such good intentions, but the delivery was... It was hilarious.
Awkward.
It was so awkward. It was so funny.
Doesn't matter, though. It works. They end up kissing. The best part is while they're making out and getting frisky and stuff, we see one of the dolphins looking through the porthole just watching. Yeah. Both the dolphins are there watching, which is hilarious.
Little weirdos.
Steve sort of sees that on the monitor where the cameras that are on the dolphins. So Steve goes and while all of this is happening, pirates invade the ship. They board the ship.
Right.
And they capture everyone. They all get tied up. And basically Steve is taken, and Steve's like walked to different cabins to get people, and he's walked to Jean's cabin, and he like knocks on the door, and he's like, Jean, is Ned in there with you? Yeah. And they're like, what? Why? What's going on? He's like, you were supposed to be on watch. He's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. He's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Get out here. There's pirates.
Yeah. Thanks for nothing.
And Steve says that they might all die, including her unborn child, which is what a great threat. They take Steve up to the deck. Everybody's sort of lined up and almost like on their knees with their faces against the wall. Everybody's got bags or something over their eyes. The pirates want to take a hostage, so Ned's in the back of their boat. Yep. He's been knocked out, and they're looking for a vault. It turns out that the bank guy can speak their language,
right.
So he's talking with them to try and find out what they want. They want a vault. Steve says, I don't have a vault. And then we cut to one of his old documentaries where he's like, and this is our vault where we keep everything important. And then it cuts right back to the pirates have already found the vault itself. Yeah. So they're taking that. And because so they've seen the documentaries before, which is the funny part.
Right.
And then they realize that if they want to take a hostage, they should probably take the person who can speak their language.
Yeah.
So they take Ned off their boat, and they take the banker instead. And as Steve's sitting there, Steve just decides, I've got to do something. So he just kind of, like, meditates for a second, takes a moment, breaks out of his binds, punches a pirate, steals his gun, and then single-handedly gun battles with the pirates.
Yes.
One of the interns gets, like, an axe or machete to the shoulder.
Yeah.
But other than that, Steve kills one of the pirates. The rest of the pirates flee with the banker and the vault,
Right.
the safe, whatever you want to call it, in tow. They get away. But he does say that the pirates were really bad at their job because they left their dog behind. Just this three-legged dog that they leave behind. And then they decide they got to bury the one pirate.
Right.
They're going to bury him at sea. As they're going to bury this pirate, Jeff Goldblum's team shows up.
Yep.
And Goldblum is trying to help them by, like, towing their ship after all the damages and stuff that happened with the gun battle and whatnot. And but he's like, in order to tow you, you gotta, there's these payments, gas, this, my crew's hourly wages, all that sort of stuff. And Steve looks at it and he's like, this is more than my documentary costs. He's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Just sign it and we'll deal with it. I'll tow you there for now. He also sees the dog, and he gets up at one point. Jeff Goldblum's character gets up with a newspaper and whacks the dog and says, like, stop moving.
Yeah.
Like, relax.
That made me mad.
Good. We do see at this point there's a sort of mutiny kind of in the works on the ship, where the stripper is trying to tell people, get people, like, on her side to be like, look, he's gone mad. He's really, like, into the revenge of this. We just got pirates and all this sort of stuff's happening. I don't want to be a part of this. Klaus is like, y'all are crazy. I'm out.
Yeah.
So Steve has everybody up on the deck. He draws a line on the deck, and he tells them, if you want to leave, don't cross this line. But if you're with me, cross the line.
Right.
Although I think he might say it in reverse, because Klaus stands up and Klaus crosses the line, and Steve goes, what are you doing? He goes, I thought this was for me to be with you. And he's like, no. And he's like, okay, let me try that again then. The stripper and the interns quit. They all decide to leave.
Not worth it.
Jean also decides to quit. She calls... she basically is, like, completely done with everything. She calls, she says, like, to her work, saying that she's done, she doesn't want to do the story, she's quitting, she's going to leave the ship. She says goodbye to Ned. He prepares her envelopes, 50 envelopes that are already stamped and return addresses and all that sort of stuff on them. And with the letterhead that he has, he's like, I've included with each one 3 pieces of paper so you can write me letters and keep me in the loop or whatever. And he's like, you could write me one right now if you wanted to.
So cute.
Steve comes down and learns that she's leaving and scrapping the article. He just straight up asks if she's sleeping with Ned. And she's like, what is, that doesn't even matter. What the hell? They reach the port. He tells the interns that they're all getting incompletes. He can't give them passing grades. He won't say that they didn't do it, but he's giving them incompletes because they're not finishing the thing. The port that they went to, he goes up to a house, and in the house is Eleanor, his wife, and he asks her if it would be possible for her to ask her parents to loan them money. Yeah. And she just says no.
Absolutely not.
No. So Steve apologizes to her. They go inside. They have a talk. He basically says he's not been having the best time lately. And Steve walks in. So they kind of have a little sort of heart-to-heart sort of discussion, basically. Back on the ship, Steve walks back into Jean's cabin again and catches Ned there again. He has a whole nother thing of being like, I told you, you can't be in somebody else's cabin, so stop. Ned says not to be... Well, he says not to be in the cabins together again. She is staying to finish the story, and Steve admits to liking her.
Yeah.
She says that he's too old, though. And he says, well, you're pregnant.
Yeah.
So he's like, I thought I had a chance because you're pregnant.
You're not one to be talking, lady.
Yeah, beggars can't be choosers.
Beggars can't be choosers.
Ned and Steve have a discussion where Steve is basically like, you heard me say to not mess with her. And he's like, you said that to Klaus. Like, I thought it was fine. You said it to Klaus, not to me. We also learned that one of the interns stayed. The one who got chopped with the machete. In the pirate attack, had stayed. Steve then says this line to Ned. He says, that pregnant slut's been playing us like a cheap film.
Oh, pregnant slut.
The pregnant slut's been playing us like a cheap film.
It's hilarious.
So Ned punches Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Or no. Steve punches Ned. And then Ned punches Steve back.
Yeah.
So they're kind of, at each other's throats at this point, all because of a girl. Even though, again, Steve is married.
Ish.
It's hard to really tell. I believe they are married, but they also just have this, like, I don't know, very weird relationship.
Yeah. They don't seem like a fun, happy married couple.
Yeah. We also learn at this point that Steve has known about Ned since he was born. Again, he just didn't want to be a father.
Right.
He also isn't actually sure if it is his or not. We don't know. Eleanor joins back. She does come back onto the boat, decides to return to help out. Eleanor's parents are helping. She brought a bunch of money. And we also learn that the banker who was kidnapped, named Bill, called them at one point and left a very brief message. Basically, in it, he's just like, hey, this local kid is helping me, so I only have a really short time to call you. And then the call ends.
Cuts out.
Eleanor is shown to be extremely smart because at this point she goes, well, with the sound quality of that call and the fact that it was a payphone, it was probably from this chain of islands, and there's only 3 islands. But on this one island used to be a nice hotel where a bunch of people would go all the time. So it's probably that's where they've got it.
Right.
And Steve's just like, she always was the brains of this operation. Like, clearly.
Yeah.
Clearly.
She's the smart cookie.
We also get this scene where Jean is sitting there and Eleanor's there. They're kind of at like a little bar kind of thing. And Eleanor's like, there's just one thing I can't figure out about Ned. And besides Steve, I guess she basically says Steve doesn't realize this about himself.
Yeah.
That nobody, including Steve, knows this. But she says, Steve shoots blanks. Like, Steve can't have children. So, I'm confused about the Ned thing.
Right.
Like, Steve should know that, but apparently he doesn't.
Right. It's a very, kind of moment.
Yeah. As they're going to these islands to try and get Bill back, the bank guy, they come across a wrecked ship. We only see, like, the nose of the ship, or whatever the front is called. The forward. Which says Operation Hennessy. So Jeff Goldblum's ship has sunk.
Right.
We don't know what exactly happened, but it sunk. And also, it was around the Ping Islands, so basically where they're going. We then get this great shot that I really love, which is everybody's in their, like, wetsuits. Mm-hmm. They've got, like, a harpoon gun. They've got their regular guns. They still have the cameraman.
Yeah.
But they're all, like, storming this island together. It's almost like a squadron rushing up, like, Bunker Hill or something in, like, a military film. And they go into this hotel, and they're, like, checking it out. It's pretty deserted. Everything's kind of dilapidated, overgrown. Plants and stuff everywhere. They decide that they've got to split up into 2 teams. And Steve is like, okay, me, Ned, this person, we're A team. Klaus, blah, 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 you're B team. And Klaus is like, yeah, he gets
Yeah.
upset, and Steve's like, what's wrong? He's like, I'm tired of being B team. He's like, you don't understand. Esteban and I always thought of you as like a younger brother.
Yeah.
You're the leader of B team. And he kind of peps up a little bit. He's like, I always thought of the two of you as my fathers.
Yeah. Like,
But he takes it. He's like, okay, I'll be the lead of. I'm the leader of B team. Let's go. They search this hotel. They go room to room, multiple floors. They find nothing. They decide, I guess we were wrong. We don't have enough gas to check either of the other islands. That sucks. It's just empty. Just they're not finding anything.
Yeah.
So they're ready to leave, and Ned and Steve sort of have this moment in sort of like this defeat that's happening, basically. And Steve says, you are my son to me.
Yeah. To me.
So, maybe not biologically, but
Yeah.
to me, you are my son.
Yeah.
And he also lets him call, to go back to like the name thing. Like, maybe not Dad, but what about Papa Steve?
Yeah.
You can call me Papa Steve if
Papa
you want.
Steve.
Then as they're leaving, they brought the dog with them, and the dog barks. And they go over to this area, and they find Bill just by himself in there, in a coat check. And as they're ready to leave again, they find a graveyard, a bunch of graves with hats and stuff, which is Jeff Goldblum's crew. We know that because we saw them before. And then again, the dog is like barking at something, and they go, and Steve goes over to see what it is, and it's just this, I don't know, big room, where you'd maybe put on some sort of show or a convention or something, like a dealer's room or ballroom or whatever. And in there is all these pirates with a bunch of shit that they've got, playing like poker, and at the end of the table is Jeff Goldblum, and he turns and he's like, did you come to save me?
Yeah.
And then everybody just starts shooting. Again, Steve is single-handedly getting into a gunfight with these guys. They shoot Jeff Goldblum in the shoulder. Ned and Klaus go in to help. Everybody else is staying out front, which is the best part. Is Ned's like, Klaus, come on, bring the dynamite, and they rush into the building. The rest of the crew is just like standing there, not moving, not reacting to anything, not trying to help or whatever. Next thing we see is just like this giant explosion from the front. Steve, Ned, Klaus, and Hennessy, Jeff Goldblum's character, escape. They're all running down the island. They found the boat with the safe on it. They found the two boats they used to board their ship earlier. One of the boats does have the safe on it. Mm-hmm. They check the safe. They open it. They're like, haha, they didn't get into the safe. When they open it, there's a giant hole in the back. So they're like, damn, I guess they did get everything.
They did get in.
They blow up the other ship, or the other little boat. They take off. As they're leaving, they realize they forgot to get the dog. So the dog's just on the island, and they're like, goodbye.
Poor little guy.
We're leaving you. Goodbye. Have a good life. Steve almost does shoot a kid on the island at one point, but Bill stops him and goes, no, that's the kid who helped me. He's literally just sitting on like a little log with a fire, roasting a crab.
Yeah.
Just roasting a crab over an open fire. I don't know if that's...
Just hanging out.
I guess that's what you would do if you didn't have like pots and pans and stuff.
That's what I would do.
Steve does want to go back to get the dog, but everybody else just says no.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, damn.
He liked that dog.
Yeah. Even though he had him for all of 10 minutes.
Right.
Steve wants to go home after this. He's just like, okay, this is a close call. Let's just, whatever, let's finish this, let's leave. But Ned keeps him going. Ned's like, no, we're going to do this. Come on, Papa Steve.
Come on, Papa Steve.
Jane wrote a letter to Ned. She slides it under the door for him, so he's, happy about that.
Yeah.
Ned puts together... Earlier on, he asked if he could redesign the insignia of the Zissou team. Before, it was just a single white Z. Just regular Z, nothing fancy. The redesign was it's 3 Z's, the white one, and then like a darker blue and a lighter blue one. So it doesn't look much different or really all that much better. This should have been our first sign that Ned, while good intentioned, is not exactly an artist, because the redesign, again, is not amazing. It doesn't look that great, really. But we see at one point he's like designed this all-encompassing logo for the team. We don't see it right away, but he says, there's the big Z here for you, Steve. There's this over here with a K, which is for you, Klaus. There's this for that and whatever. And they're like, oh, you should put an N on here for Ned. He's like, I didn't want to impose, but I mean, I guess I could put one here. We see it later on. It doesn't look great.
No. Again, we're seeing more of like his childlike qualities. Yeah. Very, very endearing, very innocent, very sheepish.
He put Klaus on a dolphin.
Yeah.
And Klaus was so moved by that, they've now seemed to have, reconciled their differences, and they've kind of become friends. Steve hands Ned... Oh, at this point, the radar system has come back up. They've figured out a ping... Or no, sorry. They've lost their radar system, so they're not sure of, like, how can we find the jaguar shark out here in the ocean. He's somewhere around here, we just don't really have a signal, so we don't know. And Ned's like, well, why don't we get up in the helicopter? Maybe if we're 1,100 feet in the air, we can see him if he's that big. So Steve and Ned get into the helicopter. And it was mentioned earlier when they first wrote on it, Ned asked, has this been serviced? And Steve says, Klaus is supposed to do it every month or something. He's supposed to like look over every part of it. While they're flying, Steve gives Ned his letter. So Steve actually had the letter that he had wrote to him. We find out that the question he asked him was, do you wish you could breathe underwater? And Ned's like, I still wish I could breathe underwater.
So cute.
So as they're flying, they hear a ding, and Steve's like, did you hear that? What was that? And he's like, oh, I don't know. Helicopter crashes into the water.
Let's circle back again on all of the things in the news lately. Let's all avoid getting into janky ass jerry-rigged things of transportation.
Jerry-rigged things of transportation.
Yeah. Just don't do it. Just don't do it.
Steve gets up. He's like, Ned, where are you? He finds Ned kind of holding onto a raft. He takes the helmet off of Ned, and they have a little moment, and then Ned dies.
Yeah.
Steve carries Ned to shore. He swam him back. We don't really know how far he went, but he brings him back to a shore somewhere. Tries to resuscitate him. Can't. Ned has died.
Very sad.
They have a funeral for him, and during this funeral, some of his friends or colleagues from Air Kentucky have flown out. They're all in their same suits, wearing their hats and everything. They put a pilot's hat on top of his coffin. Jean puts an envelope, so a letter she wrote, into the coffin with him. And then they just dump the coffin into the sea. Yeah. I love that Air Kentucky went out for this funeral.
Yeah. They had the ability to get there, so they took it. But in that scene with the chopper falling, I made a note of it. That really, I kind of jumped. I was not expecting that, and it happened. And I literally wrote down, the chopper falling scared me.
We cut back to kind of everybody sort of in mourning, kind of sitting around. Steve goes up to Eleanor and says, would you have considered adopting Ned? And she's like, Steve, he was 30. Yeah. But yeah, I would have probably considered it. Yeah. So they would have maybe done it.
He's a grown man.
Steve also talks to Jean, and he says that she is a good writer, and he realizes that what she wrote about him for that article was true. Yeah. She did end up writing that article. It was a front pager, but it called him sort of like narcissistic and all these other things, and he's like, it's harsh, but that's who I am. So he's come to kind of a realization of like who he is as a person. During this, one of the crewmates, the team, does come back up and is saying, we did get the tracker back online. Mm-hmm. We also get, during this, Jeff Goldblum is there. He walks up to get a coffee and goes, is this my coffee machine? Even though it has his name literally on the side of it. He does tell Steve at this point, big reveal. He does say something. They both have a conversation sort of about Eleanor and like, oh, we never were good with our, our picking our wives or whatever. And Jeff goes, well, I always just figured that is because I'm part gay.
Yeah. I'm part gay.
I am half gay. And Steve's just like, oh. So it's like Steve was saying those comments the whole time. Yeah. And he was true. Yeah. But he was kind of saying them in like a mean, malicious sort of way, but it does turn out his character is bisexual.
Yeah. It was a pretty funny look on his face.
Which is pretty funny.
I like that he says kind of.
Yeah.
Kind
of. So they got the tracker back up so they can find where the shark is. It's just on the other side of the reef from where they are. And Steve's like, okay, who wants to go on a ride? They all pack into the submarine, which every time we've seen the submarine before, it looked really small. But they fit like 10 characters into this thing. Like everybody who's on that ship, which is Steve, Eleanor, Gene, Klaus, Bill, the rest of the crew who I don't really remember all their names, but just the general rest of the crew, the single intern, everybody who's still alive at this point is there.
Yeah.
And they take this ride in the yellow submarine. We see a lot of colorful fish life out the windows of the subs, a bunch of different stuff. We learned that Steve is tied to the back of the sub as like bait to try and get the shark out.
Yeah.
What was it called? A rhinestone bluefin tuna. It's literally just a bluefin tuna, but it's got rhinestones all over it. So it's very sparkly looking. As they're driving, they see the school of those pink neon fish, and Steve realizes that that's a good sign. It means that he's close by. So he stops the sub, turns the lights off, and they're all just kind of sitting there in anticipation. Gotta say it like Frankenfurter from
Rocky Horror Show.
Anticipation. Yeah.
That's a good line.
As they're sitting there, we see a light off in the distance, kind of coming closer to them, slowly, closer and closer. And it's the shark. Everyone now realizes it is, in fact, real. It is massive. It is spotted, sort of like a jaguar would be. It's got the tracking dart in it, blinking away. The thing is like twice the size of their sub.
Right.
Like, it is huge.
Massive.
So it probably could have swallowed Esteban whole, but unlike Max, who swallows things whole,
yes, he does.
The jaguar shark chewed, apparently. Everybody sees the shark. It's kind of a majestic kind of moment. Everyone's like, "Wow, it's beautiful."
They're in awe.
We do get this one moment where Steve kind of contemplates to himself, I wonder if it remembers me. And then he starts to cry because he's, the journey that he's taken from the beginning of this movie where everything was anger and revenge for it killing Esteban, through the relationships he built with Ned and Gene and everything during the course of this, have kind of changed him to where, even though the bank did not want him to kill the thing, he's self-reflected a little bit with like the news article, realizing that he is kind of narcissistic and brash and not a great person, and then through his dealings with Ned has become softer, I suppose. And now, instead of looking at the creature with anger, he just wonders if that pivotal moment, if the creature remembers who he was.
Yeah.
And then he finally grieves over Esteban, over the loss, crying.
Because I feel like up until this point, even though he said, like, we're not going to kill it or whatever, I felt like he was still intending to do that no matter what anybody said. So, like, sure, I won't kill it. I'm totally going to kill it. kind of like a what's that saying? Better to ask for forgiveness than for permission.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like that was the way that he was going about it.
Right, and that if they would have found it earlier, that's probably how he would have. The shark swims away. They all leave. We then cut to another film premiere. The documentary's been finished, part 2. We see that Gina's had her baby. And we also seen like these balcony seats that where Eleanor's sitting, Klaus and stuff, there's an empty chair. Steve's not there.
Yeah.
Steve's outside, just kind of having a smoke, sitting alone. Klaus's nephew comes out at one point, and Steve gives him the Zissou Society ring that Ned had, gives it to Klaus's nephew. And the movie ends, and we hear in the auditorium just an eruption of applause and cheers and stuff. It's like they've come back.
Yeah.
It's a success again.
Massive success.
And Steve just picks up Klaus's nephew on his shoulders, starts walking down the stairs with the crowd of people behind him. He's not asking if people liked it or anything. Like, he's kind of moved past, again, kind of the narcissism and stuff that he had in the beginning, where he did care, like, did people like it? What did people think?
He wanted that validation.
Yeah, he's not even watching it anymore. He reached the goal that he set out to and kind of became a better person. And then while they're walking off, the movie ends.
Yeah. Seeing him kind of realize and self-reflect is so perfectly well done by Bill Murray. It's the way that he can be so funny and awkward, but then you get these heartwarming moments. He was so perfect for this role.
Yeah.
So perfect.
Yeah, so this was undoubtedly the first Wes Anderson movie I'd ever seen. Mm-hmm. He had a couple earlier ones I haven't seen, but we do own them from the Criterion Collection that we'll watch at some point. But this one is one that I always mention to people. That this is one I understand there's a lot of like mixed feelings on it. A lot of people, it's not one of their higher ones, but it's a little biased, and I realize that because it was the first one I saw, and Wes Anderson has his very unique style that nobody else is doing, and you can tell a Wes Anderson movie just by looking at it, and then also knowing that it was co-wrote by Noah Baumbach, who I also love his work too. It makes a lot more sense
and then
that
the animation,
this one just clicks so much more for me.
Yeah.
So I love this movie.
Yeah, I feel like between them and the animation person that did
Henry Selick,
I think those just like ticked off so many boxes for you. Like, perfect little storm of creativity.
Yeah. So this is if you've never seen it, watch the movie, give it a watch. You might just enjoy it. If you've seen it before and maybe you weren't that high on it, give it another watch. I think it's a good movie, and I think people just, I understand in like 2004 when this came out that who was Wes Anderson? What did he have before this? Like Bottle Rocket and Rushmore or whatever, like even lesser known movies of his. Sure. So, but this is a big one, and this, you can see a lot of stuff that if you love in his other movies, it's all here in this movie. Yeah. It's all here in this movie. You also do got to realize that it is a spoof sort of movie. It is a parody of Jacques Cousteau. That's what the character is. But it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun, quick-witted dialogue back and forth, snappy things that maybe you won't catch the first time. Really great lines where it's like, don't be mean to me. I just wanted to flirt with you.
So cute.
And it's a lot of fun, and there's just some weird, quirky stuff in it that, like, the dolphins are weird and they're just fun. Hennessy, Jeff Goldblum, they didn't have dolphins, they had sea turtles. We see one of the sea turtles with the flashlight on its head at one point.
Was hilarious.
The orca is just there because whatever. It's a lot of fun. It's a fun movie.
I really wish that I had seen it sooner. I'm disappointed that it took me this long to see it, but because I absolutely adore it. I could definitely see myself putting, like, if I say, I've got nothing to watch, I could definitely see myself putting that on, you know, while I do laundry or something. It's got such, like you said, just really quick-witted humor. Every single time Bill Murray's character says something under his breath, it just tickles me. And it's got so much heart to it.
Yeah.
Outside of just being visually awesome. It was a really, really, really good movie. And yeah, like you said, if you watched it the first time around and you didn't care for it, I'm a very big and firm believer in giving a movie another shot. I've said so many times before, I watched a movie, hated it, and then watched it again, and then I loved it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I recommend it as well. Very, very good movie.
Okay. Well, that's The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. Her first time watching it, my, I don't know, third or fourth time probably seeing it. But the first time in easily 10 plus years that I've watched it. So, give it a watch. Go out and watch it. Again, it's available through Criterion. If you're a Criterion collector, there you go, pick that up. Or, I don't know, it might be streaming somewhere. I'm sure it's probably on Amazon or something rentable. It came out in 2004, 20 years ago, basically. So, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
You can follow, if you're wherever you're listening to this, if you can give ratings and stuff, give us a rating, leave us comments, thumbs up, whatever you can do. Very appreciated. Very helpful for us. And yeah, you can find us all over the place. All the podcast listen places, Podbean, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, YouTube, or you can find us over on Twitch Friday nights where we review whatever movie we go and see that week.
Yeah.
And just talk and have a good time.
Yeah. It's a fun time. Get to hang out with everybody and talk movies. Stay away from the ocean.
That's the ending.
That's the takeaway.
Takeaway, stay away from the ocean.
Stay away from the ocean.
Don't get in subs. Don't go by sharks.
Nope.
Orcas might fuck you up.
Yep.
Just stay away from the water.
Just stay away.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.